She was 7, trapped in the middle of the bank lobby. Phones were pointing at her. Gerald was screaming, calling her a thief. Then Kent entered the account number. The screen flashed a balance no one believed existed. Gerald froze. The room held its breath. And when everyone realized what that number meant, the humiliation wasn't just coming for Gerald. It was already unfolding. But let's rewind to how a simple bank visit turned into a public showdown no one expected. A grown man laughing at a child. That's where this begins. Gerald Hutchins stood in the middle of First National Bank, surrounded by his usual crowd of admirers. Expensive suit, gold watch that caught the light every time he moved his wrist. The kind of man who measured his worth by how many people turned their heads when he walked into a room. And on this particular Tuesday afternoon, he decided a 7-year-old girl would be his entertainment. Her name was Zara, small for her age, wearing a faded purple backpack almost as big as she was. She'd walked up to the counter with a crumpled deposit slip clutched in one hand, standing on her tiptoes to see over the marble edge. That's when Gerald noticed her. Well, he said loud enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear. Look at this. A kid playing banker. A few people glanced over. Some smiled nervously. Gerald's friends, 3 men in similarly expensive suits, turned to watch. They knew when Gerald was warming up for a show. Zara didn't look at him. She was focused on the teller, trying to slide her deposit slip across the counter. Gerald stepped closer. Hey, sweetheart. You lost? Your mom dropped you off at the wrong building. The little girl finally turned. Her eyes were steady, calm in a way that seemed strange for someone so young. She didn't answer. That silence made Gerald angrier. What, you can't talk? He laughed, gesturing to his friends. Or maybe you just don't belong here. This is a bank, not a daycare. One of the tellers opened her mouth to intervene, but Gerald raised a hand. He wasn't finished. He leaned down, getting closer to Zara's face. Close enough that she had to smell the coffee on his breath. Tell you what, kid, I'll make you a deal. A real generous one, since I'm feeling nice today. His voice got louder. Everyone in the lobby could hear now. If you actually have a balance in this bank, if you've got more than $50 sitting in some little piggy bank account, I'll pay you double whatever's in there. Right here. Right now. His friends burst out laughing. One of them slapped Gerald on the shoulder. But when you don't, Gerald continued, straightening up with a smirk, you admit you walked into the wrong place. Deal. Zara looked at him for 3 long seconds. Then she reached into her backpack. If you believe no child should ever be mocked for their color or age, subscribe right now. Only people who agree with Gerald's cruelty would ignore this. The bank manager appeared from his office. Gerald didn't notice at first. He was too busy soaking up the laughter from his friends, already planning how he'd tell the story at dinner later. But Zara had pulled something from her backpack. A small card, black, with silver lettering that seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. She handed it to the teller without a word. The teller's face changed instantly. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the card, then at Zara, then back at the card like she was holding something that might burn her fingers. Ma'am, Gerald called out, annoyed at losing the spotlight. What's the hold-up? Let's wrap this little comedy show up. The teller didn't respond. She was typing something into her computer, fingers moving fast. Then she stopped, stared at the screen. Her hand came up to cover her mouth. Is there a problem? The bank manager asked, stepping up beside her. She turned the monitor toward him. The color drained from his face. Gerald's smile started to fade. Something was wrong. The energy in the room had shifted, and he couldn't figure out why. People weren't laughing anymore. They were watching, waiting. Sir, the bank manager said quietly, looking at Gerald. His voice had changed. Respectful, almost fearful. This young lady has requested verification of her account balance. Great, Gerald said, forcing confidence back into his voice. So let's see it. Probably got, what, $20 from her birthday. The manager hesitated. He glanced down at Zara, then back at Gerald. Would you like me to display it publicly, as you requested? Yeah, that was the deal. What happened next would replay in Gerald's nightmares for years. The manager walked to the large display screen mounted on the wall, the one they usually used for mortgage rate announcements and promotional offers. He connected his tablet, entered a code, and pulled up the account information. The number appeared on the screen in massive digits. $52,847,293.61. The lobby went silent. Not the kind of silence where people are holding their breath for what comes next. The kind where reality itself seems to pause and recalibrate. Gerald's mouth fell open. His friends had stopped laughing. One of them actually took a step backward, like the numbers on the screen might reach out and grab him. Someone whispered. That's 52 million. Zara stood perfectly still, watching Gerald with those same calm eyes. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, just waited. The bank manager cleared his throat. This account belongs to Miss Zara Whitmore-Chin. He paused, and his next words came out careful, deliberate. Daughter of Marcus Whitmore. The name hit the room like a bomb. Marcus Whitmore. The Marcus Whitmore. Tech mogul. Real estate empire. Hotels across 3 continents. A man whose net worth was calculated in billions, not millions. And Gerald had just offered to double his daughter's account balance. His hands started shaking. The math was already crushing him. Double 52 million. Over $100 million. Money he didn't have. Money he couldn't even imagine having. Zara finally spoke. Her voice was small, but crystal clear. You said you'd pay double. But here's the part that made it worse. The bank manager wasn't finished talking. Miss Whitmore-Chin's account, he continued, his voice getting quieter, is held at Whitmore Financial Group. He paused, letting that sink in. This branch. The building you're standing in right now. Gerald blinked. His brain was moving too slow to catch up. One of the other customers gasped. She'd figured out before Gerald did. Marcus Whitmore doesn't just bank here, the manager said, each word landing like a hammer. He owns this entire institution. Purchased it 18 months ago. Every branch, every account, every employee in this building works for him. The lobby felt like it was tilting. Gerald's friend, the one who'd been laughing the loudest, started backing toward the door. He knew what was coming. Smart money always knows when to leave. So when you made that bet, the manager continued, you weren't just mocking a child. You were mocking the owner's daughter. In his own bank. Gerald's legs went weak. He grabbed the counter to steady himself. Zara still hadn't moved. She stood there with her backpack straps digging into her small shoulders, watching Gerald the way you'd watch a car accident. Horrible, but impossible to look away from. Someone in the back of the crowd whispered, Is that really Whitmore's kid? The manager nodded. Her mother is Thandai Chin Whitmore. They've been married for 9 years. Miss Zara is their only child. The pieces were falling into place now. People were pulling out their phones. A few were already typing, probably searching for photos of the Whitmore family. Within seconds, they'd find them. Marcus and Thandai at charity galas, always with a little girl between them. Same bright eyes. Same purple backpack in some of the casual shots. Gerald's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. She didn't say. His words tumbled out broken and desperate. She's 7, someone said from the crowd. A woman's voice, sharp with disgust. Why would she need to announce who her father is? Gerald turned, looking for support from his friends. But they were gone. All 3 of them had slipped out the door while he wasn't paying attention. Rich people have a talent for disappearing when scandal starts brewing. The math was still crushing him. $105 million. That's what he owed if he kept his word. But breaking his word meant something worse. It meant the entire financial world would know Gerald Hutchins made bets he couldn't cover. His reputation, the only real currency he had, would be worthless. And Marcus Whitmore wasn't the kind of man who forgot. Zara reached up and adjusted her backpack. The movement was so casual, so ordinary, that it made everything more surreal. She was just a kid who'd come to the bank to make a deposit, probably had some birthday money or allowance she wanted to save. And Gerald had turned it into this. "Sir," the manager said, his tone shifting to something cold and professional, "would you like to honor your agreement? Or shall I note in our records that you prefer to default on verbal contracts made in front of witnesses?" The question hung in the air like poison. Gerald's face had gone from red to gray. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. His expensive suit suddenly looked cheap, like a costume that didn't fit anymore. What would you do? Stand there knowing you'd just gambled everything on cruelty? Knowing the entire room was watching you drown? Subscribe if you want to see karma work in real time. Only cowards look away now. But let's rewind. Because Gerald wasn't the only villain in this story. 3 hours earlier, Zara, whose full name was actually Zara Alani Whitmorchin, sat in the back of her mother's car, staring out the window at the city passing by. Her mother, Thandai, was on the phone. Always on the phone. Running a medical research foundation meant the calls never stopped. Zara had learned to entertain herself during these long drives. She clutched a small envelope in her hands. Inside was a check for $200, payment for a piano recital she'd performed at a charity event the month before. Her first real earned money. Not allowance. Not birthday gifts. Money she'd worked for. She'd practiced that piece for 3 months. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Her fingers had cramped. She'd cried twice when she couldn't get the timing right. But she'd done it. And now she had proof. "Mom," she said quietly, not wanting to interrupt the phone call. Thandai held up one finger. "Wait." Zara waited. She was good at waiting. When you're 7 and your parents run empires, you learn patience early. The car pulled up to First National Bank. Thandai ended her call and turned around. 20 minutes, baby. I have a meeting across the street. Can you make your deposit yourself? Banks aren't scary, remember." Zara nodded. She'd been to banks before, always with her parents. But never alone. "You have your card?" Zara pulled out the black card with silver lettering. Her father had given it to her on her 6th birthday. "This is yours," he told her. "Your money. Your responsibility. Mama and I put funds in there, but you decide what to do with them. That's how you learn." She hadn't touched it much. The account scared her. Too many zeros, too much responsibility. But today felt different. Today, she wanted to add her own money to it. Money she'd earned. "If anything feels wrong," Thandai said, leaning over the seat to kiss her forehead, "you come right back to the car." "Okay." "Okay." Zara climbed out, her purple backpack bouncing against her shoulders. It had unicorns on it. She'd picked it out herself last year, back when unicorns were her favorite thing in the world. Now she liked space more, planets and stars and black holes. But she still loved this backpack. The bank's glass doors slid open with a soft whoosh. Inside, everything was marble and gold accents. Fancy. The kind of fancy that made her feel small. She walked up to the counter, going to the shortest line because that made sense. The woman ahead of her finished and walked away. Zara stepped forward, standing on her tiptoes. The counter was too tall. She could barely see over it. The teller looked down, smiled. "Hi there, sweetheart. Are you here with your parents?" "Just my mom. She's across the street. I need to make a deposit." The teller's smile got bigger. "All by yourself? That's very grown-up." Zara felt proud. She pulled out the envelope with her check and the deposit slip she'd filled out at home. Her handwriting was messy. She knew that, but she tried her best. That's when she heard the voice behind her. Well, well, look at this. A kid playing banker." She turned around. A tall man in a gray suit stood there, looking at her like she was a stain on his shoe. His friends were laughing before he'd even finished his sentence. Zara's chest tightened. She recognized that look. Not the exact face. She'd never seen this man before, but the expression. The way his eyes moved over her, categorizing and dismissing in the same glance. She'd seen it at country clubs when her parents brought her along. She'd seen it at fundraiser dinners when adults assumed she was lost or didn't belong. She'd seen it in airports, in hotel lobbies, in places where people made quick judgments based on skin and age and how much space they thought you deserved. Her mother had talked to her about this, prepared her. Some people, Van Dyve had said, holding Zara's hands, will look at you and only see what they expect. They won't see how smart you are, how kind, how hard you work. They'll just see a little black girl and decide you don't matter. What do I do? Zara had asked. You remember who you are. Not because of Papa's money. Not because of our last name. Because of you. Because you're Zara Alani, and you're extraordinary. But right now, standing in this bank with this man's laughter echoing off the marble walls, Zara didn't feel extraordinary. She felt 7 years old and small and scared. The man was getting closer, talking louder, making his bet, demanding she prove she belonged. Her hands shook as she reached into her backpack. She didn't want to use the card. It felt like cheating, like hiding behind her father's success instead of standing on her own. But the man wasn't giving her a choice. He'd made this about money, about worth, about whether she had the right to exist in this space. So she pulled out the card, and everything changed. What Zara didn't know, what nobody in that lobby knew yet, was that her father had just landed at the airport 15 minutes away. He'd finished his business trip early, decided to surprise his family. He was on his way to pick them up. Before the number appeared on the screen, before Gerald's world collapsed, there was a moment. Just a few seconds where the bank employees looked at each other. And some of them smiled. Not kind smiles. The other kind. The ones that cut. 3 tellers stood behind the counter, huddled close enough to whisper. The youngest one couldn't have been more than 22, covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Is that really happening? She whispered to the woman beside her. The older teller, a woman named Petra who'd worked there for 16 years, nodded slowly. Her eyes stayed on Zara. That's Whitmore's kid. Should we say something? Petra shrugged. Not our problem. Let her learn how the world works. Another employee, a man processing loan applications in the back office, stepped closer to watch. He'd heard Gerald's voice booming across the lobby and came out to see the entertainment. $20 says the kid starts crying, he muttered to his coworker. 30 says she runs out. They both chuckled. Low and quiet, but Zara heard it. Kids always hear the things adults think they miss. The security guard near the door shifted his weight, watching the scene unfold. His hand rested on his belt, not on his radio. He wasn't going to intervene. Gerald was a regular customer, brought in big accounts, the kind of client banks loved. And Zara? She was just a kid, probably wandered in from the street. These things happen sometimes in downtown branches. Children getting confused, walking into the wrong building while their parents shopped nearby. Nobody considered that she might actually belong there. The bank's marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Everything about the space screamed money and exclusivity. The chairs in the waiting area were Italian leather. The pens chained to the counter were weighted and expensive. Even the air smelled different, filtered and climate-controlled to perfection. This was a place designed to make certain people feel powerful, and other people feel small. Gerald's voice got louder, and more customers turned to watch. A woman in a business suit paused her phone conversation. An elderly man lowered his newspaper. 2 college kids waiting to open checking accounts started filming on their phones. Everyone loves a spectacle, especially when it's free. One of Gerald's friends, the one still standing there before they all fled, leaned against a marble pillar, arms crossed, grinning. "This is better than lunch," he said. Gerald fed off the attention, got bolder. meaner. His words came faster, sharper, each one designed to cut deeper than the last. And the bank employees? They just watched. The manager had seen everything from his office. His door was glass. He could see the entire lobby. He'd watched Gerald approach Zara, watched him lean down and make his bet. He'd reached for his phone twice, almost called security, almost stepped in. But Gerald was Marcus Whitmore's college roommate's cousin. Some connection like that. The manager couldn't remember exactly, but he knew there was a relationship there. Complicated family trees that rich people navigated like minefields. Better to wait. See how it played out. Maybe the kid would leave on her own. Maybe her parents would show up and handle it quietly. Maybe it would all resolve itself without him needing to risk offending anyone important. So he waited. And while he waited, Zara stood there absorbing every laugh, every smirk, every dismissive glance. Her small hands gripped her backpack straps tight enough to leave marks on her palms. She'd been taught not to cry in public. People will use your tears against you, her mother had said. They'll call you emotional, unstable. They'll say it proves you don't belong. So Zara didn't cry. She just stood there, feeling the weight of every eye in that lobby pressing down on her shoulders. The marble walls felt like they were closing in. The gold accents looked like teeth. The whole space transformed from impressive to threatening in the span of 30 seconds. This was the world her parents had tried to prepare her for. The one where your worth gets questioned before you even open your mouth. Where people make bets about your humanity for entertainment. But here's what none of them knew yet. Zara wasn't alone. Her mother was across the street, wrapping up her meeting. And her father's car had just pulled into the underground parking garage. If you've ever been judged before you could speak, you know this feeling. Stay here. After the account balance flashed on the screen, after the gasps and the silence, the bank manager finally stepped forward. Not to apologize, not to defend Zara, to protect Gerald. Now let's all calm down, he said, raising his hands like he was negotiating a hostage situation. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding here. The crowd turned to look at him. Some confused, some angry. A few already recording everything on their phones. The manager's name was Kent Bradshaw, 48 years old, 2 failed marriages, a BMW he couldn't quite afford, but leased anyway because image mattered in banking. He'd worked his way up from junior associate to branch manager over 23 years, and he knew how to read a room. Right now, the room was turning against Gerald, which meant Kent needed to shift the narrative fast. Miss, he said, looking at Zara with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. That's quite a substantial balance. Can you tell me how you came to possess that account card? The question sounded innocent, professional. It wasn't. Zara looked up at him, confused. My dad gave it to me. Your dad. Kent nodded slowly, like he was talking to someone who might not understand complex ideas. And what's your dad's name? Marcus Whitmore. Kent's smile tightened. Sweetie, Marcus Whitmore is a very famous man. A lot of people might claim to know him or be related to him. Are you sure that's your father's name? Or did someone tell you to say that? The implication hung in the air like smoke. Gerald seized the opportunity. His face was still pale, his hands still shaking. But he'd found a lifeline, and he grabbed it with both fists. That's what I've been trying to tell you people, he said, his voice getting stronger. This is clearly some kind of scam. She probably stole that card. Or someone gave it to her to use. I was trying to expose the fraud before she made off with someone's money. A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. The narrative was bending. Kent nodded, encouraging Gerald to continue. That's a valid concern. Identity theft is a serious issue, especially when children are involved. Exactly, Gerald said. He was regaining his confidence now, rebuilding his armor piece by piece. She shows up here alone, no parents, with a card that supposedly has $50 million on it? That's not normal. That's suspicious. Zara's eyes went wide. I didn't steal anything. Of course you'd say that, Gerald shot back. What thief admits it? Kent turned to his staff. Someone call security. We need to detain this child until we can verify the account's actual ownership and determine how she obtained the card. The younger teller reached for the phone. That's when the crowd started pushing back. Are you serious right now? A woman near the back stepped forward. She'd been recording the whole thing. You're going to accuse a 7-year-old of theft because she proved him wrong? We're following protocol, Ken said smoothly. When there's potential fraud. The only fraud here is you trying to cover for your customer's behavior, someone else called out. Kent's jaw tightened. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or leave the premises. I'll leave after you apologize to that little girl. There's nothing to apologize for. We're protecting our client's assets. Gerald straightened his tie, sensing the momentum shifting back in his favor. She walks in here dressed like that. He gestured at Zara's simple clothes, her scuffed sneakers. And you people just believe she's Marcus Whitmore's daughter? Come on. Use your heads. Dressed like what? Another woman demanded. Like a child? Is that the problem? The problem, Gerald said coldly, is that she's trying to con this entire bank, and I'm the only one with the sense to call it out. He looked at Zara directly. You're a thief in ribbons and a backpack. And when the police get here, they're going to take you away. Is that what you want? Zara's lower lip trembled. She was trying so hard not to cry, but Gerald's words were finding their target. She was 7, and despite everything her parents had taught her about staying strong, about knowing her worth, she was still just a little girl being called a criminal by adults in expensive suits. Kent pulled out his phone. I'm calling our fraud department. They'll want to investigate this immediately. The security guard moved closer to Zara, positioning himself between her and the door. The college kids filming exchanged glances. This was going viral. They knew it. Everyone knew it. But what none of them knew was that Marcus Whitmore had just walked into the building's underground parking garage. And he could hear everything happening upstairs. Zara's hands were shaking, but she didn't run. That's the thing people forget about courage. It's not the absence of fear. It's standing there while your heart pounds so hard you can feel it in your throat, while every instinct screams at you to flee, and choosing to stay anyway. She looked up at Kent, then at Gerald, then at the security guard moving closer. Please, she said quietly. Just check it. Gerald laughed. Check what? A stolen card? We already saw the fake balance on the screen. It's not fake. Zara's voice was small but steady. It's my account. My dad opened it for me when I turned 6. He puts money in every month. For my future. For college. For when I'm older. Kent crossed his arms. And where is this father of yours right now? At the airport. He was supposed to land an hour ago. Mom's picking him up after her meeting. Convenient, Gerald muttered. Dad's always somewhere else when you need proof. But something was shifting in the crowd. People were really looking at Zara now. Not just at the spectacle, but at her. At the way she stood with her shoulders back despite being terrified. At the way she wasn't screaming or throwing a tantrum like some kids would. She was trying to explain. Trying to be reasonable with adults who'd already decided she was guilty. An older woman in a blue dress stepped closer. Honey, do you have any other identification? Something with your name on it. Zara nodded quickly. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small wallet. Inside was a library card. A student ID from her school, Riverside Academy, one of the most exclusive private schools in the state. And a medical alert card with her name, date of birth, and emergency contacts. She handed them to Kent. He examined them, his expression unreadable. The library card showed her full name, Zara Alani Whitmorchin. The school ID had her photo, same bright eyes, same serious expression. The medical card listed 2 emergency contacts, Van Dychen Whitmore and Marcus Whitmore, along with phone numbers. Kent's grip on the cards tightened slightly. These could be fabricated, Gerald said quickly. Anyone can print fake IDs. Schools, libraries, it's not hard. You think a 7-year-old orchestrated an identity theft scheme? Someone in the crowd asked incredulously. No, but whoever's using her did. Gerald was sweating again, but he pushed forward. This is probably some elaborate scam. Use a kid, because who would suspect child? It's brilliant, actually. Sick, but brilliant. Zara's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back hard, remembering her mother's words. Don't let them see you cry. But it was getting harder. Kent handed the IDs back to her. These appear legitimate, but I still need to verify. Then call him, Zara interrupted. Her voice cracked slightly. Call my dad. The number's right there. He'll tell you. Kent hesitated. If he called, and it really was Marcus Whitmore, this entire situation would explode in his face. But if he didn't call, and it turned out the girl was telling the truth, that would be even worse. He was trapped between two bad options. Gerald sensed the hesitation. Don't waste our time with phone calls. Just get the police here and let them sort it out. That's what they're paid for. I'm not a thief, Zara said louder now. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. I came here to deposit my recital money. $200. I earned it myself. I just wanted to put it in my account. She pulled out the envelope with her check, held it up so everyone could see. The check was made out to Zara A. Whitmorchin from the Riverside Children's Music Foundation for exactly $200. I played piano, she continued, her voice shaking but determined, at their spring fundraiser. It took me 3 months to learn the piece. My teacher said I did really good. They paid me, and I wanted to save it. That's all. I just wanted to save my money. The lobby went quiet. Even Gerald didn't have a quick response to that. Because there's something about a child talking about earning their own money, about being responsible and trying to do the right thing, that cuts through cynicism. The woman in the blue dress wiped at her eyes. Someone called the number on that medical card. Right now. Kent's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, he pulled it out, looked at the screen. His face went white. The text message was from the bank's regional director. Is there a situation at your branch? Marcus Whitmore is calling the executive office. Says his daughter is being harassed. What the hell is going on? Kent's hands started to shake. Comment, I stand for justice, if you'd be on Zara's side in that moment. Don't let Gerald's arrogance go unanswered. Gerald saw Kent's face change, saw the color drain, saw the text message light up the screen even though he couldn't read the words. And he knew he was losing. So he did what desperate people do. He went bigger. You know what? Gerald said, his voice cutting through the silence. I'm a generous guy. Everyone here knows that. So let's make this really interesting. He stepped closer to Zara, his shadow falling over her. I'll triple it. You hear me, kid? Triple. Whatever's supposedly in that account. I'll pay you 3 times that amount if you can prove it's real. Right here, right now, in front of all these witnesses. The crowd stirred. Someone gasped. But when you can't prove it, Gerald continued, pointing at her, you admit you're a liar. You admit someone put you up to this. And you tell us who. He turned to face the crowd, arms spread wide like a showman. Fair deal, right? She gets triple her money if she's telling the truth. And if she's lying, we all get answers. Everybody wins. Kent's phone buzzed again. He was staring at it, frozen. Gerald's friends had slipped back into the lobby. They'd been outside, probably trying to distance themselves, but curiosity, or maybe loyalty, had pulled them back in. Now they stood near the door, watching their leader make a stand. Come on, Gerald pressed. What's the hesitation? If that account is real, if you really are Marcus Whitmore's daughter, then you're about to walk out of here with $150 million. That's life-changing money. Generational wealth. You'd be set forever. He crouched down to Zara's level, his voice dropping to a mock whisper that everyone could still hear. Unless you know something we don't. Unless you know that card is fake and you're hoping we'll just let you walk away before someone checks. Zara's jaw tightened. She looked at the card in her hand. The black surface reflected the overhead lights, making the silver letters shimmer. She was 7 years old. She didn't fully understand what $150 million meant. Her concept of money was still small, allowance for candy, saving up for toys, the $200 check she'd earned for her recital. But she understood humiliation. She understood being called a liar in front of strangers. She understood the way Gerald looked at her, like she was something dirty he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. "I told you," she said quietly. "It's my account." "Then prove it." Gerald stood back up, addressing the crowd again. "Let's put this to bed once and for all. Either she's Marcus Whitmore's daughter, and I write her the biggest check of my life, or she's a fraud, and we all learned a valuable lesson about trusting appearances." The college kids, filming, edged closer. Their phones were capturing everything, every word, every expression, every second of this confrontation. One of them muttered, "This is insane. This is absolutely insane." Kent finally looked up from his phone. His voice came out hoarse. "Mr. Hutchins, I don't think." "Triple," Gerald interrupted loudly. "That's my final offer. Take it or leave it, kid." Zara looked at the teller who'd been helping her before all this started. The woman gave her a small nod. Not encouraging, exactly. More like acknowledgement. Like she was saying, "It's your choice." The security guard had moved back slightly, no longer blocking her path to the door. He'd seen the text messages lighting up Kent's phone. He was smart enough to know something was shifting. The woman in the blue dress whispered, "Honey, you don't have to do anything. You can just wait for your parents." But Gerald had backed Zara into a corner, and 7-year-olds don't always have the wisdom to walk away from a challenge, especially when their integrity is being questioned in front of dozens of people. Zara looked up at Kent. "Check it again, please." "Check my account." Gerald's smile was pure poison. "This is going to be fun." Kent's hands trembled as he walked back to the computer terminal. He didn't want to do this. Every instinct screamed at him that he was about to detonate his career. But Gerald was standing there waiting. The crowd was watching. The phones were recording. He had no way out except forward. He entered the account number manually this time. Double-checked every digit. Then hit enter. The system took 3 seconds to load. 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then the balance appeared on his screen. Just a screen, not the big display yet. He stared at it, not breathing. The numbers didn't make sense. They couldn't be real. Nobody kept that kind of liquid cash in a bank account. That wasn't how wealthy people operated. They had investments, portfolios, assets spread across holdings. But there it was. $52,847,293.61, plus interest that had accrued since the last display. The account was active, real, verified, and according to the account notes, it was structured as an irrevocable trust. Marcus Whitmore was the trustee. Zara Alani Whitmorchin was the sole beneficiary. The account had been opened on her 6th birthday. Monthly deposits had been made like clockwork, ranging from $50,000 to $500,000, depending on the month. There were notes in the account history. Little messages Marcus had left for his daughter, timed to appear when she reached certain ages. For when you turn 13, remember, money doesn't define you. Character does. For when you turn 18, you've earned every opportunity this provides. Use it wisely. For when you turn 25, your mother and I love you more than any amount in this account. Kent's throat tightened. This wasn't just money. This was a father building a future for his daughter, leaving her messages across time. And Kent had called her a thief. "Well," Gerald demanded, "what's it say?" Kent's voice came out as a whisper. "It's real. Speak up. Nobody can hear you." Kent turned around, facing the crowd, facing Gerald. "The account is real. The balance is accurate. She is Marcus Whitmore's daughter. The lobby exploded into noise. Gasps, exclamations, people talking over each other. Gerald's face went through 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Disbelief, shock, horror, anger, and finally a kind of desperate denial. That's impossible. You're reading it wrong. I'm not. Let me see. Gerald moved toward the computer. Kent blocked him. Sir, I can't show you another customer's private account information. Another customer? Gerald's voice climbed higher. You just showed it to the entire bank. At your insistence. After you made a public bet that required verification. Gerald spun to face Zara. His face was red now, veins popping in his neck. This is a setup. You knew. You came in here knowing exactly what would happen. This was all planned. Zara shook her head, confused. I just wanted to deposit my check. Triple. Someone in the crowd said. You offered triple. That's $158 million. The number seemed to hit Gerald physically. He stumbled backward, catching himself on a chair. His friend near the door, the last one who hadn't completely abandoned him, pulled out his phone and started calculating. His face went pale. He mouthed something to Gerald. Probably, you don't have that. Because nobody did. Nobody in that room had $150 million just sitting around, available to hand over. Gerald had bet his entire life on humiliating a child. And the child had won. Kent's phone rang. Not a text this time. An actual call. He looked at the screen. Marcus Whitmore. Direct line. He answered it with shaking hands. Mr. Whitmore, I can explain. The voice on the other end was quiet, controlled, lethal. I'm in the parking garage. Is my daughter still in your lobby? The elevator doors opened. Everyone in the lobby turned toward the sound. It's strange how silence can have texture, how you can feel attention shifting like a physical force. Marcus Whitmore stepped out. He wasn't what people expected. Movies and TV shows taught everyone that billionaires look a certain way, silver hair, expensive suits, an entourage of assistants. The image of corporate power wrapped in Italian wool. Marcus was 43, tall but not intimidating, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater. His hair needed a cut. His sneakers were scuffed. He carried a worn leather bag over one shoulder, the kind someone takes on long flights when they value function over fashion. He looked like he could be anyone's dad coming home from a business trip. But the way he moved changed the air. There's a kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. That doesn't need gold watches or designer labels. It's the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and having nothing to prove to anyone. Marcus had that. His eyes scanned the lobby. Found Zara immediately. She was still standing near the counter, her purple backpack straps clutched in her small hands, her eyes red from holding back tears. Something in Marcus's expression shifted. Not anger. Something colder. More dangerous. He crossed the lobby in 6 long strides, knelt down in front of his daughter, gently took her face in his hands. Hey, baby girl, he said softly. You okay? Zara's lower lip trembled. Dad, I just wanted to deposit my recital money. I know. Your mom told me. I'm so proud of you for coming in by yourself. They said I stole the card. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed gentle. They were wrong, and they're going to apologize. But first, I need you to go wait with Mama, okay? She's right outside. But, trust me, this is grown-up stuff now. I'll handle it. He kissed her forehead, then stood and guided her toward the door. The crowd parted automatically. Nobody wanted to be in his path. As Zara reached the exit, Thandai burst through. She must have seen Marcus's car in the garage. She took one look at her daughter's face and pulled her into a fierce hug. What happened? She demanded, looking at Marcus. I'm about to find out. Thandai's eyes swept the lobby, landed on Gerald, who'd gone very still. Then on Kent, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. She understood immediately. "Do what you need to do," she said to Marcus. Then she took Zara outside. Marcus turned back to the lobby. His expression had changed now that Zara was gone. The gentle father disappeared. What remained was something else entirely. He walked to Kent first. "You're the manager?" Kent's voice cracked. "Yes, sir. Kent Bradshaw. Mr. Whitmore, I apologize for any. Did you call my daughter a thief?" "I didn't use that exact word." "Did you threaten to detain her?" Kent's mouth opened, closed. He had no good answer. Marcus nodded slowly. "We'll come back to you." He turned to Gerald. "And you are?" Gerald tried to straighten up, tried to find some of his earlier confidence. "Gerald Hutchins. I'm a client here. A significant one. You made a bet with my daughter." "It was a joke. A misunderstanding. A joke." Marcus took a step closer. His voice didn't rise, but somehow it filled the entire space. "You looked at a 7-year-old child and decided she'd be your entertainment. You mocked her, humiliated her, made her prove her worth to you. That's your idea of humor. I didn't know she was your daughter." Why would that matter? The question hung in the air like a blade. If she was someone else's child, would that make it okay? If she was poor, if she had nothing, would that justify your cruelty? Gerald had no answer. The crowd was silent, watching. Marcus pulled out his phone. "You offer triple, I'm told. 158 million, give or take." That was before. Before you knew she could pay? Before you knew there would be consequences. Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Here's what's going to happen next. And I want everyone in this lobby to bear witness." He raised his voice slightly, making sure every phone camera caught what came next. "You're going to learn what it costs to humiliate my daughter." Gerald's brain was working fast now, searching for an exit. "Sir, please," he said, lowering his voice. "Let's step into an office. We can discuss this privately. There's no need to involve all these people." Marcus didn't move. "Why would we do that?" "Because this is a private matter. Between you and me, business people. We can work something out that's reasonable for both parties." Reasonable. Marcus repeated the word like he was tasting something bitter. "You humiliated my daughter in front of dozens of strangers. You called her a thief. You made her prove her existence to you for your entertainment. And now you want privacy." Gerald glanced at the phones, still recording, at the crowd pressing closer, at the college kids who'd probably already uploaded clips to social media. "I understand you're upset," Gerald said carefully. "But making a scene won't help anyone. Your daughter doesn't need to see her father lose control. Let's handle this like professionals." It was a good play. Appeal to Marcus's sense of propriety. Suggest that making this public would be beneath him. Give him an out that looked like taking the high road. Marcus saw right through it. "You wanted an audience when you thought you'd win," Marcus said. "You made sure everyone was watching when you mocked her, when you laughed, when you demanded she prove herself worthy of basic respect. But now that you're losing, suddenly you want privacy. That's not. No." The word cut through Gerald's protest like a knife. "You chose to do this publicly, so we'll resolve it publicly. Every person in this lobby, everyone watching on those phones, everyone who hears about this later, they'll all know exactly what happened here." Gerald's face flushed red. "You're making a mistake. I have connections, lawyers, people who threaten me." Marcus's voice was still calm, still controlled. Somehow that made it more terrifying. "Go ahead. Threaten me in front of all these witnesses. Let's add that to the list." Kent stepped forward, trying to salvage something. "Mr. Whitmore, perhaps we could arrange a meeting with our regional director. A proper forum to address concerns." Marcus turned to him. "You want to know what I'm concerned about? My 7-year-old daughter standing in a bank, my bank, being accused of theft by your customers while your employees watched and laughed. Kent's face went pale. Sir, I never laughed. No, you didn't laugh. You did something worse. You enabled it. You saw what was happening and calculated which side would cost you less. You chose wrong. The crowd was dead silent. Even the people on their phones had stopped scrolling, completely absorbed in what was unfolding. Marcus pulled out his phone, started typing. This is going everywhere. Not because I want revenge. Not because I'm vindictive. But because every parent needs to see what can happen when adults decide a child isn't worth protecting. Please, Gerald said, his voice cracking. Don't ruin my life over a mistake. A mistake is dropping a glass, forgetting an appointment, taking a wrong turn. Marcus looked up from his phone. What you did was a choice. Multiple choices. You chose cruelty. You chose to mock her. You chose to escalate when you could have backed down. You chose to call her a thief when the evidence proved you wrong. Those weren't mistakes. Those were decisions. He turned to address the entire lobby. How many of you recorded this? Raise your hands. Slowly, about 15 hands went up. The college kids. The woman in the blue dress. Gerald's friend near the door. Even one of the bank employees. Good, Marcus said. I want you to post it. All of it. Tag me if you want. I'll share every single one. Because the world needs to see this. Not to destroy one man, though he's done that to himself, but to show what happens when we look at children and decide they're less than human because of how they look or how old they are. Gerald's legs were shaking now. You can't do this. There are laws. Privacy laws. In a public space? Where you initiated the interaction. Where you made the bet voluntarily. Marcus smiled coldly. Talk to your lawyers. They'll explain how badly you've miscalculated. The woman in the blue dress was already typing on her phone. The college kids were uploading videos. You could see the view counts starting to climb in real time. Hundreds. Thousands. The algorithm was picking it up, sensing engagement, pushing it further. Gerald watched his reputation disintegrate in real time. Each share was a nail in the coffin of his social standing. His business relationships, his carefully constructed image. I'll pay her, he said desperately. Whatever she wants. Just make this stop. Marcus shook his head slowly. Now you'll pay. But not because you want to. Because I'm going to make you. He looked at Kent. Clear your schedule. We're not done here. Then he walked back to the door where Thandai and Zara waited outside. The crowd parted again, creating a path. Nobody said a word until he was gone. Hit subscribe if you believe the truth should never be hidden in back rooms. Only liars and manipulators keep things in the dark. Marcus pushed through the glass doors and found Zara sitting on a bench outside, squeezed between her mother's arms. Thandai looked up, her eyes fierce. Tell me everything. In a minute. Marcus knelt down in front of Zara. Hey baby, how are you feeling? Zara's voice was small. Did I do something wrong? The question hit Marcus harder than anything Gerald had said. This was what the world did to children like his daughter. Made them doubt themselves. Made them wonder if they were the problem when adults failed them. No, he said firmly, taking her hands in his. You did everything right. You were brave. You were honest. You stood up for yourself. I'm so proud of you. But that man said. That man was wrong. About everything. And he's going to learn that. Marcus brushed a tear from her cheek. Listen to me. Some people in this world will look at you and make up their minds before you even speak. They'll see your skin, your age, your gender, and decide you don't matter. They're wrong. Every single time they're wrong. Zara nodded, but he could see she didn't fully believe it yet. How could she? She was 7. The hurt was too fresh. You know what the hardest part about being your dad is? Marcus continued. It's knowing I can't protect you from every cruel person. I can't be there every time someone decides to judge you unfairly. But what I can do is make sure you know your worth. Make sure you remember who you are. And make sure that when people do treat you badly, there are consequences. Thandai's hand rested on his shoulder. She understood what was coming next. Marcus stood up, looked back at the bank. Through the glass doors, he could see Gerald still standing in the lobby, surrounded by cameras and witnesses. "Stay here with Mama," Marcus said to Zara. "This part isn't for you to see." "What are you going to do?" Thandai asked quietly. What should have been done the moment he opened his mouth. Marcus walked back into the bank. The energy shifted immediately. People stepped back, giving him space. Even Gerald moved backward instinctively. Marcus's voice carried across the marble lobby. "My name is Marcus Whitmore. Some of you know that already. For those who don't, here's what matters. I own this building, this bank, every branch in this state. 18 months ago, I bought Whitmore Financial Group because I believed in community banking, in treating people with dignity, in creating spaces where everyone, regardless of their background, could feel safe." He gestured toward the glass doors. "That little girl outside? That's my daughter, Zara. She's 7 years old. She plays piano. She loves space documentaries. She's scared of thunderstorms, but won't admit it. She works hard in school. She's kind to people even when they don't deserve it." His voice got quieter, which somehow made it more powerful. "And today, in my bank, she was mocked by a customer and threatened by my staff." Kent tried to speak. Marcus raised a hand. "You don't get to talk yet. Right now, you listen. All of you." He turned to face the crowd. "This bank serves thousands of people. Different backgrounds, different income levels, different stories. And every single one of them deserves respect. Not because of their balance, not because of their last name, because they're human beings." He pointed at Gerald. "You mocked her in my bank. You made a spectacle of humiliating a child because you thought it would be fun, because you thought there would be no consequences." Gerald's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Marcus's eyes swept across the room. "Everyone here is a witness to what he did, to what's about to happen next. And when this story spreads, and it will spread, I want the world to see how we handle men who think cruelty is entertainment." He pulled out his phone again, started recording. "Gerald Hutchins made my daughter promise. A bet. A deal witnessed by everyone in this lobby." Marcus's finger hovered over the post button. "It's time to collect." Gerald's hands shot up like he was being robbed. It was a joke. The words tumbled out desperate and loud. "You have to understand, it wasn't serious. Nobody actually expects. I mean, those kinds of bets aren't legally binding. They're just talk. Just." He trailed off, watching Marcus's expression remain unchanged. "Just what?" Marcus asked. "Just words? Just entertainment? Just something you say when you think there won't be consequences?" "Yes. Exactly." Gerald latched onto this like a drowning man grabbing driftwood. People make exaggerated offers all the time. It's hyperbole. You can't hold me to something that was obviously not meant literally. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "So when you said you'd pay double if she had a balance, you were lying?" "Not lying, just." "And when the balance was verified, when you saw $52 million on that screen, you offered to triple it. Was that also a joke?" Gerald's face twisted. "You're twisting my words." "I'm repeating them, word for word, in front of the same people who heard you say them." Marcus gestured to the crowd. "Anyone here think Gerald was joking?" Silence. A few people shook their heads. The woman in the blue dress spoke up. "You sounded pretty serious when you were mocking that little girl." "I wasn't mocking." Gerald stopped himself. The videos existed. Denying what everyone had seen and heard would only make it worse. "Look, I admit I was inappropriate. I'll apologize. I'll even write a check for, say, $10,000 as a gesture of goodwill. But $150 million? That's insane. Nobody has that kind of money just sitting around. You thought she didn't either, Marcus said quietly. That was your whole point. You mocked her because you were certain she had nothing. You were counting on her humiliation, banking on it, if you'll excuse the expression. One of the college kids snorted. Kent shot him a look. Gerald ran his hands through his hair. His expensive styling was falling apart, making him look disheveled. Desperate. You're a businessman. You understand how the world works. Deals need to be in writing. There are contracts, terms, conditions. You can't just enforce verbal bets made in the heat of the moment. The heat of the moment, Marcus repeated. Is that what we're calling calculated cruelty now? I didn't calculate anything. She was. Gerald's words crashed into each other. This isn't fair. You're using your money and power to destroy me over one mistake. One mistake that you repeated, and escalated, and defended, and only regretted when it cost you something. Marcus's voice stayed level, calm. That was worse than shouting. You want to talk about fairness? My daughter walked into a bank to deposit $200. Money she earned playing piano. And you decided that moment was your opportunity to feel superior. Gerald's face crumpled. Real tears now, not the manipulative kind. The kind that come when someone realizes they've destroyed themselves and there's no way back. Please, he whispered. I'm begging you. I have a family, a business. This will ruin everything. You should have thought about that before you made your daughter the punchline of your joke. She's not even. Gerald stopped himself, but the damage was done. Marcus's eyes went cold. Finish that sentence. I dare you. Gerald's mouth clamped shut. But everyone knew what he'd almost said. She's not even yours. Implying that adopted children, stepchildren, children who didn't share DNA, that they somehow mattered less. The woman in the blue dress actually gasped. Marcus nodded slowly. There it is. The truth beneath the joke. You didn't just mock a child. You mocked her for being my black daughter, for existing in a space you thought she didn't belong. Gerald had no defense left. No words. No excuses. Just the crushing weight of his own choices. Marcus let the silence stretch. Let Gerald stand there drowning in it. Then he spoke, his voice clear enough for every recording device to capture. Pay her what you promised. Gerald's face went white. I told you I don't have. Then get it. That's not possible. Nobody can just produce $150 million. Even if I liquidated everything, my house, my investments, my business, I'd maybe reach 20 million. Maybe. Marcus nodded like he'd expected this answer. So you made a promise you couldn't keep. Offered payment you couldn't provide. Made a bet you never intended to honor. Is that what you're telling all these witnesses? The trap closed around Gerald. Either he was a fraud who never meant his words, or he owed a debt he couldn't pay. Both options destroyed him. I was operating under the assumption that she had nothing, Marcus finished. That she was poor. That mocking her would be consequence-free. Yes, we've established that. But you still made the offer. In front of witnesses. Voluntarily. Repeatedly. Kent cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore, perhaps a reasonable settlement. He made the bet. He set the terms. He escalated when he could have walked away. Marcus's attention didn't leave Gerald. This isn't about the money. My daughter doesn't need his money. This is about showing him and everyone watching that words have weight, that promises matter, that you can't just say whatever serves you in the moment and expect no consequences. Gerald's friend near the door, the last one still there, finally spoke up. Gerald, stop talking. Get a lawyer. Smart advice. Too late. Gerald was panicking now, words spilling out unfiltered. You want to bankrupt me over this? Over a misunderstanding? That's cruel. That's vindictive. That's justice. The woman in the blue dress interrupted. You were ready to humiliate a child for fun. Now you're upset that it's costing you something. It's not the same. You're right, Marcus said. It's not. Because my daughter did nothing wrong. She was innocent. You? You chose everything that happened here. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then turned the screen so Gerald could see. It was a legal document. Already prepared. Already signed by Marcus's attorneys. This is a civil complaint. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Public humiliation of a minor. We have witnesses. Video evidence. Your own recorded words. We'll file it in about, he checked his watch, 20 minutes unless you meet my terms. Gerald's voice cracked. What terms? First, you pay my daughter what you promised. The full $158 million. I don't care how you get it. Loans. Liquidation. Begging family. That's your problem. That will destroy me. Yes, it will. But here's option 2. Marcus swiped to another document. You issue a public apology. Not a corporate statement. Not a lawyer-written paragraph. A real apology. On video. Explaining exactly what you did, why it was wrong, and what you're doing to make amends. Gerald's hope flickered. An apology? That's all. Not quite. You also donate $2 million to a charity that supports children's education. Specifically children from marginalized communities. The kind of kids you think don't belong in your spaces. $2 million was still devastating, but it wasn't bankruptcy. Gerald grabbed onto this lifeline. Done. I'll do it. Right now. And you resign from every board, club, and organization you belong to. You make it public that you're stepping down due to personal conduct that doesn't align with their values. Gerald's face twisted. Those positions were his identity, his network, his entire social standing. That's too much. Then pay the $158 million. The crowd waited. Nobody moved. This was the moment everything hinged on. Gerald's shoulders slumped. Defeat looked like a physical weight pressing down on him. The apology. The donation. The resignations. I'll do it. On camera. Right now. I want to see your face when you say it. Gerald nodded numbly. Marcus gestured to one of the college kids. You. Start recording. The kid scrambled to pull out his phone, hitting record with shaking hands. Marcus positioned Gerald in front of the camera. The lighting was harsh, unflattering. Gerald looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd gambled on cruelty and lost. Whenever you're ready, Marcus said quietly. And Gerald, if you try to minimize this, if you make excuses, if you do anything except take full responsibility, the lawsuit files immediately. Understood? Gerald looked into the camera. His mouth opened. And for the first time in his life, Gerald Hutchins told the complete truth about who he really was. Gerald Hutchins had always believed he was untouchable. Money bought silence. Influence erased mistakes. Status insulated him from consequences. But on this day, inside a glass-walled bank lobby filled with strangers, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was the blinking red lights of a dozen phones, all capturing his downfall in real time. He stood there cornered, while Marcus Whitmore positioned him under the harsh overhead lights. Gerald's once polished look had crumbled. Sweat ran down his temples, his tie hung loose, and his voice cracked with every word. My name is Gerald Hutchins, he began, his tone uneven, and today I humiliated child. The words echoed through the marble lobby. Every eye stayed fixed on him. A man who had laughed minutes ago now looked like he'd aged 20 years. I mocked her because of her age, because of her skin, because I thought I could get away with it. His throat bobbed, the reality of his own admission cutting him deeper than he expected. But I was wrong. He swallowed hard, glancing sideways at Marcus, then back into the phone camera. I offered a cruel bet. I thought she had nothing. I thought I was powerful. But she had dignity. She had truth. And she had more than I could ever imagine. The crowd murmured, leaning closer, as if watching history rewrite itself in real time. Gerald pressed on. words tumbling out because silence was no longer an option. I'm ashamed of myself. I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask for accountability. That's why I'm resigning from every board, every club, every position of influence. Effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the room. His entire social empire, the network that had taken decades to build, was being burned down in a single sentence. But Marcus wasn't done. He stepped closer, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. And the donation. Gerald's lips trembled. His pride begged him to resist, but survival overpowered ego. And I will donate $2 million to charities supporting children's education, especially those from communities I once disrespected. The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some whispered, and others just shook their heads, astonished at how quickly the tables had turned. Gerald's friend at the door slumped against the wall, covering his face. Kent, the bank manager, stood frozen, watching his career circle the drain alongside Gerald's reputation. Marcus leaned closer, his voice low enough for only Gerald and the nearest phones to hear. Look into that camera. Don't flinch. Don't soften it. Say it like you mean it. Because the world will. Gerald's jaw clenched. He looked into the phone again, eyes red, lips trembling. What I did was cruel. What I did was wrong. And it will follow me for the rest of my life. But if one good thing comes out of it, let it be this. May every child know they are worthy of respect, no matter their color, no matter their age, no matter what. For a long second, the room was silent. Then the woman in the blue dress whispered, "Post it." And just like that, it spread. The college kid uploaded the clip before Gerald even lowered his eyes. Notifications buzzed instantly. View counts jumped, hundreds then thousands. The algorithm smelled blood in the water. Outrage. Justice. Controversy. Within an hour, the video had crossed state lines. By lunchtime, it was trending in multiple cities. By evening, hashtags blazed across every platform. Hashtag respect for Zura. Hashtag Gerald exposed. Hashtag words have weight. Comment sections filled with fire. Imagine mocking a 7-year-old girl. Disgusting. He thought money made him untouchable. Look at him now. Marcus Whitmore is the dad every child deserves. News outlets picked it up before the day ended. Cable panels dissected the clip. Talk shows replayed it on loop. Even late-night comedians found material in Gerald's collapse. But the real power wasn't in the headlines. It was in the millions of ordinary people who watched a little girl walk into a bank for the simplest reason, depositing her recital money, and watched grown men tear her down. The world saw what happened when one father refused to let it slide. And Gerald? He couldn't hide. Paparazzi camped outside his house. Board members cut ties. Longtime friends sent messages that began with, "It's best if we distance ourselves." Every cruel laugh, every smug smirk, every word he thought would vanish into thin air was now immortalized online. Inside his mansion, the silence was deafening. He'd once mocked Zara for having nothing. Now he was the one stripped of everything. Respect, position, influence. All gone. Meanwhile, in a quiet living room across town, Zara curled on the couch with her mom. She was still shaken, still processing what had happened. But for the first time since that awful moment in the lobby, she smiled. Her dad had kept his promise. He had turned cruelty into consequence. And she was no longer the girl mocked in a bank. She was the girl the world stood up for. Marcus tucked a blanket around her shoulders, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "See? The truth doesn't need defending. It defends itself." The video played again on the TV, Gerald's confession rolling like thunder through the speakers. And outside that home, millions of people press share, comment, repost. The humiliation that Gerald tried to inflict on a child had come back tenfold. Proof that sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes from a phone in the right hands. If you can't stand people like Gerald who bully the innocent, comment, "Everyone deserves respect." Let's flood this story with truth. Just when the world thought Gerald Hutchins had been silenced, he came roaring back. It started 3 days after the video went viral. His empire was collapsing. Stock prices tied to his name plummeted. His resignation made headlines, and sponsors scrambled to distance themselves. But Gerald had never been the kind of man to accept defeat. If his reputation was going down, he was determined to drag someone else with him. And the target he chose? Marcus Whitmore. On a Tuesday morning, Gerald booked an exclusive interview with a popular primetime host. He showed up dressed in a crisp suit, mask of confidence painted across his face. Cameras rolled, lights burned hot, and his smirk returned. "They've painted me as a monster," he began, voice calm and rehearsed. "But let me remind America, heroes aren't always what they seem." The host leaned forward, sensing drama. "What do you mean by that?" Gerald's smile widened. "Marcus Whitmore, the man everyone is worshiping online, isn't the saint you think he is. He built his fortune not through brilliance, but through backroom favors and shady deals. He plays the victim's champion by day, but at night, he's cutthroat, ruthless. People have suffered under his so-called empire." The statement landed like a grenade. The clip cut, spliced, and posted online before the interview even ended. Within hours, social media split down the middle. Some commenters clapped back immediately. Classic deflection. He's trying to drag Marcus down with him. Typical bully move. Shift the spotlight when you're cornered. But others hesitated. Doubt crept in. Wait, is it true? Did Marcus get rich playing dirty? Gerald knew exactly what he was doing. His power wasn't in proof, it was in planting seeds of suspicion. Once people start to question, the story takes on a life of its own. He doubled down. He leaked anonymous documents, hinting at shell companies tied to Marcus's investments. He fed whispers to gossip blogs. Every headline screamed controversy. Is America's new hero hiding a dark past? Gerald Hutchins strikes back, exposes Marcus Whitmore. Marcus stayed silent at first. He didn't want to dignify Gerald's accusations with a response. But the silence created its own storm. Neighbors started avoiding eye contact. Reporters crowded outside his home. Even Zara's schoolmates whispered about her father, asking, "Is your dad in trouble?" Inside their home, the tension was unbearable. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his phone buzzing with messages from board members, journalists, even friends unsure of what to believe. Zara, clutching her stuffed bunny, asked the question that broke him. "Daddy, did you do bad things too?" Marcus's chest tightened. He pulled her into his arms, his voice steady but full of pain. "No, sweetheart. I've worked hard for everything we have. I've made mistakes, yes, but not the kind Gerald is claiming. Don't you ever doubt that." But Gerald didn't care about truth. He cared about chaos. And for a moment, it looked like he might succeed. On talk shows, pundits argued. Was Marcus just another wealthy man hiding skeletons? Was Gerald telling the truth, or just a desperate liar clawing for attention? The debate was messy. And, in America, messy sells. Then came the twist Gerald hadn't expected. One of the very bloggers he fed false information to decided to dig deeper. Instead of confirming Gerald's claims, she uncovered something else. The evidence was fabricated. Shell companies? Fake. The leaked emails? Forged. Her expose hit the internet like lightning. Gerald's lies. How a fallen mogul tried to frame his rival. The backlash was instant. People who had wavered now snapped back with fury. Gerald's attempt at revenge had blown up in his face. But before the truth cleared the air, Marcus had endured days of doubt, suspicion, and whispered judgment. The damage wasn't fully undone. His image was still bruised, his family still shaken. And Gerald? Instead of crawling into obscurity, he laughed. Literally laughed, during a live stream the next evening. "What? You think I care? As long as Marcus feels even a fraction of what I felt, it's worth it. The truth is irrelevant. Perception is power. That was Gerald's last gamble, not to win, but to poison, to ensure that even if he lost everything, Marcus could never live untouched. And it worked to a degree. Because even with the lies exposed, not everyone read the follow-up story. Some people only remember the accusation, not the correction. That's the thing about rumors. They're louder than apologies, faster than facts, and far more difficult to erase. By the end of the week, Gerald was trending again. Not as a businessman, not as a philanthropist, but as the man who had turned his own destruction into a circus of suspicion. And Marcus? He sat quietly in his home office, staring out the window, realizing that winning one battle didn't mean the war was over. Gerald wasn't done. Not yet. The world expected Marcus Whitmore to fight fire with fire. After all, Gerald Hutchins had gone on national television and accused him of building his empire through shady deals. The easy move would have been rage, lawyers, threats, or a tear-filled denial. But Marcus didn't play Gerald's game. He chose silence. For 3 days, he said nothing. Not a statement, not a press release, not a word. And when he finally did speak, it wasn't in a flashy interview or on a primetime stage. It was in a quiet press room with no drama, no smirk, no theatrics. Just him, a plain desk, and a single microphone. He looked straight into the camera. His face was calm, his voice steady. Stone against a storm. Proof, Gerald, Marcus said. Show it, or silence yourself. The room froze. That was it. No excuses. No complicated explanations. Just 6 words that cut through every rumor like a blade. Show it, or silence yourself. It was the calmness that rattled people most. Gerald had screamed, gestured wildly, and waved around so-called documents. But Marcus? He didn't shout. He didn't defend every accusation. He simply demanded evidence. And everyone knew Gerald had none. The silence after Marcus's short statement was deafening. Reporters expected him to elaborate, to argue, to prove his innocence with piles of paperwork. Instead, he stood, nodded once, and walked off the stage. The clip was posted online within minutes. The contrast was undeniable. Gerald's wild rants against Marcus's unshakable calm. Comments flooded in. That's how you deal with lies. Straight and simple. Gerald looks like a clown. Marcus looks like a leader. Proof or silence. End of story. The calm response did what no angry rebuttal could have done. It made Gerald look desperate. Because the truth is, when you're telling the truth, you don't need to shout. But when you're lying, shouting is all you've got. Gerald tried to push back. He jumped on another live interview the same night, insisting Marcus was dodging the hard questions. But his words sounded weaker, shakier, even to his supporters. The public had already decided. Marcus's stone calm challenge exposed Gerald's strategy for what it was, a distraction, a smear campaign, a last gamble to stay relevant. And people were tired of it. The next morning, headlines told the story loud and clear. Marcus Whitmore calls Gerald's bluff. 6 words that shut down a scandal. And while Gerald fumed in his mansion, pacing the halls and screaming at his staff, Marcus spent his evening at home, sitting with Zara on the porch swing. She leaned against him, holding her juice box, whispering, "Daddy, you didn't even yell." Marcus chuckled softly. "Sometimes, sweetheart, the loudest thing you can say is said calmly." She nodded, her small face glowing with relief. Because even at 7 years old, she understood the difference between noise and truth. The world now saw it too. Gerald had shouted himself into a corner. Marcus had stood still, and the silence spoke louder than anything else. In the end, lies burn hot, but they burn out. The truth doesn't rush. It waits. And when it arrives, it doesn't need applause. It simply stands. Subscribe if you believe truth always wins over lies. The only ones who won't are the ones who side with Gerald's false accusations. The morning was quiet, almost too quiet for the storm that had been raging for days. Gerald Hutchins sat alone in his office, The screens around him flashing news, alerts he no longer wanted to read. Every headline was another reminder of how far he had fallen. Meanwhile, auditors arrived at Victor Sterling's offices. Calm, professional, unshakable. They combed through years of transactions, contracts, and statements. Every number, every deal, every document was scrutinized, and every one of them told the same story. Victor Sterling had built his empire legally, cleanly, and transparently. By noon, the auditor's report was ready. The verdict was simple, clear, and devastating for Gerald. No evidence of wrongdoing. No shady deals. No fraud. Nothing. News outlets didn't wait. Headlines spread like wildfire. Victor Sterling cleared. Audits confirm legal empire. Gerald Hutchins' accusations debunked. Truth wins. Sterling's reputation untouched. Gerald's office phone rang endlessly, but he didn't answer. Emails piled up from lawyers, investors, and partners, all asking the same question. How could he have made such reckless claims? He tried to respond, tried to salvage his credibility, but the words wouldn't come. Every defense sounded hollow. Every excuse rang false. The truth was a hammer, and it had already fallen. Outside, social media erupted. Clips of Gerald yelling, ranting, and pointing fingers at Victor were circulating faster than anyone could count. Millions had watched him humiliate himself, thinking he could twist reality in his favor. Now, the world saw the consequences. Even those who had once sympathized with Gerald began to turn. The outrage was no longer just about the bet with Marcus Whitmore. It was about honesty, responsibility, and the limits of cruelty. Inside his office, Gerald finally slumped into his chair. His face was pale, eyes hollow. For the first time in his life, he was truly alone. No allies. No witnesses to cover his back. Just the truth staring him in the face. Victor Sterling didn't gloat. He didn't post scathing remarks or make public statements beyond the auditor's report. He understood that the calm confirmation of truth was far more powerful than any argument or insult. But Gerald couldn't handle silence. He clawed at his phone, trying to control the narrative. But the harder he fought, the faster it slipped from him. Every tweet, every news clip, every post reinforced one undeniable fact. He had been wrong. Completely, irreversibly wrong. By evening, Gerald's empire felt smaller than a sandcastle against the tide. Investors pulled out. Board members resigned. His public image was a tangle of lies, ego, and humiliation. People stopped returning his calls. Even his friends, the ones who had stayed loyal during the Whitmore incident, had vanished. And all the while, the world watched. Phones recorded, cameras clicked, screens glowed. Every humiliation, every desperate claim, every false accusation, it was all preserved, all undeniable, all visible. In the contrast of calm truth and manic lies, Victor Sterling stood unshaken. Gerald Hutchins collapsed under the weight of his own fabrications, proving a lesson millions witnessed firsthand. Cruelty and deception might seem powerful in the moment, but the truth always finds a way to prevail. And when it does, no shouting, no begging, no manipulation can undo it. The morning after the audits was colder than usual. The sun rose over the city, but in Gerald Hutchins' world, it felt like darkness had taken permanent residence. The office he once commanded, like a king, now felt alien, hostile, and unbearable. Calls came from every direction. Lawyers, investors, even friends. All delivering the same verdict in different words. His credibility was gone. His name, once whispered with admiration in boardrooms, was now a cautionary tale. A warning. A punchline. By mid-morning, Gerald received notice. Termination from every company where he held power. Boards, partnerships, advisory councils. His influence erased, one letter at a time. There was no appeal. There was no negotiation. The world had seen too clearly who he was and what he had done. News outlets framed it with brutal clarity. Gerald Hutchins, from power to public humiliation. The man who bet on a child and lost everything. A cautionary tale. Cruelty has consequences. Even casual observers on social media joined in. Hashtags circulated. Videos of Gerald's outburst and failed accusations trended worldwide. Commentary poured in not just about his arrogance, but about the deeper lesson. Accountability is non-negotiable, no matter your wealth or position. Meanwhile, Fandai, Zara's mother, kept her daughter close. The purple backpack straps, once gripped tightly in fear, were now held with pride. The girl who had been mocked, humiliated, and questioned now walked taller. Every step a quiet declaration of courage. The bank, once a stage for Gerald's cruelty, became a shrine to integrity. Marcus Whitmore, calm as ever, oversaw the restoration of trust. Employees who had hesitated now shared their relief and respect. They had witnessed firsthand what it meant to defend dignity. Fandai's phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages of admiration, congratulations, and gratitude flowed in. People from all over, parents, teachers, strangers who had seen the clips, reached out to praise the young girl who had faced ridicule without losing her composure. The public's fascination wasn't just about money or scandal. It was about principle, about the small but brave standing up against the powerful. Zara's courage became a symbol, a reminder that age, size, or status doesn't define value or truth. Even Gerald's former allies had disappeared. There were no whispers of support, no quiet defenders. The people who had once lined up at his table now avoided his gaze. Business cards, once prized, were shredded. Invitations rescinded. His reputation, built over decades, crumbled in days. At home, Gerald stared at his reflection. Every line on his face told the story of greed, arrogance, and hubris. He had gambled on cruelty and lost more than money. He had lost respect, security, and identity. The silence was deafening. No one called him to advise. No one asked for his insight. His world had contracted to the small, empty space of regret. Contrast that with Zara, whose courage had sparked admiration, celebration, and opportunity. Her name was no longer whispered, it was cheered. The schools, community centers, and even news outlets featured her story. She was young, yes, but the impact of her bravery rippled far beyond her age. In the end, the lesson was clear. Choices matter. Words carry weight. Cruelty, especially toward the innocent, never stays hidden. Gerald's downfall was dramatic, public, and irreversible. Alani's rise, though quieter, was no less profound. Integrity, courage, and truth had won. And as the city moved forward, the story of that day became a guidepost. People remembered the humiliation of one man and the quiet heroism of a child. Respect, once taken for granted, was now a lesson observed. The scales had tipped, justice was sealed, and the message was clear. In a world where power tempts cruelty, bravery and truth always prevail. Hit subscribe if you believe in the triumph of courage and integrity over arrogance and lies. Let this story remind the world that everyone deserves respect, no matter their age, their size, or their last name. The evening sun cast a warm glow over the Whitmore family home. Inside, the echoes of the day still lingered, phones buzzing with messages, news clips playing softly, and the hum of life slowly returning to normal. Marcus, tall and steady, found his daughter sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, her recital money carefully stacked beside her purple backpack. She looked tired, but her eyes were wide, thoughtful, and alert. He knelt down, meeting her gaze. "Zara," he said softly, "do you know what they tried to do today?" She nodded. "They said I stole. They said I wasn't supposed to be there, that I didn't belong." Marcus shook his head gently. And none of that was true. Not for a second. But what matters isn't what they said, it's what you know. Zara frowned, trying to understand. "What I know." "Yes," he said. "Your worth was never in their laughter, in their bets, in their assumptions. It was always in your heart, in your courage, and in the way you carry yourself when the world tries to tell you otherwise. She looked down at her hands, then up at him. Even when they laughed at me? Especially then, Marcus replied. Courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about standing tall even when fear and doubt try to weigh you down. Today, you taught a room full of people something important. You reminded them that dignity isn't given, it's lived, and that truth, honesty, and bravery can't be bought, mocked, or stolen. Zara smiled faintly, a small, proud light in her eyes. Marcus continued. People like Gerald will try to measure you by their own standards. They'll try to humiliate, manipulate, or belittle. But your value isn't their judgment. It never has been. And today, the world saw that. They saw a 7-year-old stand firm while a man lost everything because of his cruelty. That is the power of truth. That is the power of dignity. He pulled her into a hug, careful and protective. Remember this, always. The world will test you, but nothing can touch who you truly are inside. Never forget it. Zara leaned into him, finally letting herself relax. For the first time all day, she felt safe, not because the world had changed, but because she knew her own strength. And in that quiet, golden moment, a lesson settled deep. Courage, integrity, and dignity outshine fear, mockery, and power. Some battles are public, some private, but the victories that matter most live quietly in the heart. If you believe every child deserves dignity, subscribe now. If not, comment and explain why you'd ever stand with someone like Gerald.